Hey everyone, my name is Nathan, and today I wanted to make a video honoring Sidney Lumet. It is his birthday today, and so I thought I would rank my 10 favorite movies from him. Now on the screen right now, you will see a list of the 15 movies I have seen from him, just so you have an idea of what 10 movies could make my ranking. Okay, before any of you say anything, this list might seem a little pointless because I think all of you know what my number one is going to be, but still stick with me here because I had a blast watching his filmography preparing for this video, and I would still love to talk about my number 10 through 2. My number 10 goes to Running on Empty. The big highlight of this movie for me is River Phoenix, of course. It follows him, his little brother, and his parents. They're on the run from the law for a crime the parents committed several decades earlier. And so you're following River especially as he's trying to adjust to living this life on the run, constantly changing his name and his story. It's very hard for him, and he gives the performance that really sells it. He was nominated for an Oscar for this movie. I'm really glad he got at least one Oscar nomination before his early death because he does a great job in this movie and really was the biggest highlight for me. I also found it neat watching a coming of age film in the 80s. This is my own fault, but I feel like when it comes to 80s teen films, they're comedies. And so watching a drama from the 80s was pretty refreshing and I really enjoyed it. Number 9 goes to Network. Now, I know this movie is going to be a lot higher on a lot of your lists, but let me just kind of explain where I'm coming from. I went into the movie with very high expectations and I got a good movie, but I just think I was a little underwhelmed because of my high expectations. Kind of like River Phoenix with Running on Empty, Peter Finch and Network is the highlight for me. Anytime we were following him and he was on screen, that's when I was invested. But I think I got a little bit too bored with the side stories, the love affair that's happening, the new show that's coming. And I know that these stories, they all fit into the main story of the movie. But for me personally, that was when I got most distracted and just kind of bored. I really wanted it to just stick with Peter Finch. When the movie starts and you see him on TV announcing the ending of his show and that he will be committing suicide in a week, my attention was grabbed. I was very hooked and I was excited to see what would happen, but then the movie just kind of fell off for me and wasn't as, I guess, thrilling as I was expecting it would be. One thing I will say though is it's neat how this story still applies to today. Lots of cool lessons, and the movie was made in the 70s, so really neat there. Coming in at number 8, I have Serpico. Man, I've really been highlighting the main actor performances. I love Al Pacino in this film, and again, he's the highlight for me. I also love underdog stories, especially if it involves someone taking on a big organization. Movies like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and, well, Serpico, where he works in the police force, he knows that there are dishonest things happening and he's trying to take a stand. I love those kinds of movies, and so Serpico worked really well for me. There are a few slow scenes, but overall I just really enjoyed the story and was rooting for Serpico the whole time. My next movie is The Pawnbroker. I love Rod Steiger in The Heat of the Night, but this to me is the performance of his career. He gives it his all and it is a devastating performance. The first year I did my award show on this channel, the Alfies, I had Rod Steiger nominated for Best Actor in a Leading Role, and he actually won it. That's how good he is. So he was my favorite performance of the entire year of movies I watched in 2020. But the movie is very devastating. It's very sad. It's dealing with someone who survived the Holocaust camps and he now owns a pawn shop and his family is gone. He's living alone. He just doesn't have too much going for him. And then on top of that, he has the nightmares and the atrocities of living after experiencing the Holocaust. And so as you can imagine, very sad watch, very tough watch, also very depressing. I've only seen it one time. I don't know when I'll watch it again, but if I do watch it again, let me tell you, it will be for Rod Steiger's performance, not so much for the content of the film itself because it is very sad. Rod Steiger did get an Oscar nomination for Best Actor in a Leading Role at the Oscars. I mean, obviously he won my award show, but the Oscars actually nominated him, but he lost to Lee Marvin for the movie Cat Ballou. I never heard of it, but I looked at it and it's a comedy, and I read once that Rod Steiger was disappointed that he lost for this one, especially because he gives such a moving performance and he lost to a comedic performance. Nothing against Lee Marvin, of course, but it is a little sad because when you've seen this movie, you know Rod Steiger does give it his all. Number 6 is possibly the most obscure movie on this list, or at least one of them. It is Death Trap. The movie suffers a little bit from a slow start, but about 10 minutes after Christopher Reeve comes into the movie, it's just great and nonstop fun until the end of the movie. movie. It's a mystery movie, it's a whodunit, you're wondering how it's going to end, and it keeps throwing fun twists at you again and again. It was a movie that I remember I started it and I was like, I don't know about this one, and by the time it started really going and getting better and better, I was hooked. And let me just say, this is seriously due for a rewatch because I loved this one. It also has a young Michael Caine, so it's pretty cool seeing Michael Caine and Christopher Reeve work together. Dog Day Afternoon is based on a real bank robbery that actually happened. They made a movie about it, and I was expecting it to just be nonstop thrills, but really I was shocked when the first half of it was very comedic. I found myself laughing a lot. It's very clear that the robbery wasn't planned very well, and just things that happen are very funny. And so when I was watching, I was like, this is more of a comedy. And then the second half, it seems like Sidney Lumet suddenly walked onto set and made it one of his movies. That's not a diss at all to the first half of the movie. The whole movie's great, but I think the second half, that's when it really becomes a Sidney Lumet film where there is a lot of tension and suspense. Ooh, this is hard. Oh, okay. The Verdict is a courtroom drama starring Paul Newman about a down-on-his-luck lawyer who has resorted to cheap cases and a lot of alcohol consumption. I love courtroom dramas. It's one of my favorite subgenres of film, and so this one was always intriguing to me. And yeah, I loved The Verdict. I will say that I can see some people having a hard time with it because Paul Newman isn't the most likable character. I talk about these stories I love so much when the underdog takes on the big corporation and beats them, and you're rooting for them, and it's so fun to root for them. Paul Newman, while yes, you are rooting for his character in this movie, it's also hard at times because he's not the most honest guy. In fact, he's pretty dishonest in a lot of cases. You're excited and you're rooting for him, but you're also kind of like, but you're still kind of a stinker. With that being said, I still really enjoyed The Verdict for Paul Newman's performance, for the subject matter, and once again, one of those stories where you're just rooting for the underdog, hoping that they win in the end. The Hill is a movie that stars Sean Connery. It's about him and several other men being shipped to this prisoner of war camp. I don't know if you could really call it a prisoner of war camp because they're all kind of on the same side, but basically these soldiers have committed very petty crimes, and so for that, their punishment is living in this camp, and as the main punishment, they are forced to run up and down this hill. I kid you not, it doesn't sound too bad. You even see the hill in the movie and you're like, that's nothing, but watching it will make you physically exhausted. I was watching this and I dreaded every one of these soldiers. They're under the hot, scorching sun, running up and down a sandy hill with a big backpack on their backs. It looked awful and it truly was torturous. The Hill also has that classic story of standing up to the big guys, and I love Sean Connery in this movie for that. I also really enjoyed Ossie Davis's performance in this movie. He's one of Sean Connery's roommates. They're in the same troop or whatever you want to call them. It's a frustrating watch too. It's very hard to watch. You see these men get tortured slowly. It's nothing like a torture scene or anything like that, but it's just the slow decline of what this camp does to them as they're living there. But there's great cinematography, plenty of moments where you feel like you're in the movie, great performances, lots of tension too. The Hill is a very underrated movie, and I highly recommend you see it if you haven't yet. Now we're at my top two. I've given both of these movies a 5 out of 5. Number 2 goes to Failsafe. This movie is also due for a rewatch, but I still remember the one time I've seen it, how big of an impact it left on me. Basically, because of a technical difficulty, the US accidentally sends a bomb to blow up Moscow. This begins a war between two sides, and I'll leave the rest a secret so you can watch the movie and experience it for yourself. I loved Failsafe though. It felt a lot like 12 Angry Men, where you're stuck in these rooms with just a bunch of dudes arguing. The camera angles also felt very similar to 12 Angry Men, as well as the lighting, the tension, and the performances that you get from these actors. I would say the first half hour or so is all build up, but the moment Henry Fonda comes into the movie as the President of the United States, it is a thrill ride for the remainder of the film. It feels like an extended episode of The Twilight Zone, which, newsflash, is my favorite TV show of all time. And that especially works because there are actors in this movie who are also in The Twilight Zone. It's a frustrating movie, but it is such a good one, and I guarantee you will be invested the whole time. I love Failsafe, and I can't wait to rewatch it. And my number one movie, all of you guessed it before even clicking on the video, it is 12 Angry Men. The funny thing about Sidney Lumet's filmography is every movie that I just talked about, I've seen one time. 12 Angry Men, I've seen at least 6 or 7 times, I would say. It's an annual watch for me. I always find myself rewatching it, and anytime I do rewatch it, I get something new out of it. There's a reason that it's so highly rated on the IMDb Top 250. There's a reason that so many people love this film. I've talked many of videos about this movie. In fact, I have a whole entire video devoted to 12 reasons why I love 12 Angry Men. So watch that video for an in-depth review on 12 Angry Men. But let me just say, I love this film, incredibly rewatchable, love the performances from each of the 12 Angry Men. I love the tension, I love the character change that you see from the beginning to the end. I love how claustrophobic the room is. I love the sweat, I love the camera angles, the shadowing, the lighting, the dialogue. Everything about 12 Angry Men to me is just perfect. And it's even in my top 5 movies of all time at number 3. This is me saying that not only is this my number 1 Sidney Lumet film, it is my 3rd favorite movie of all time. I have seen over 1,000 movies. How many movies have I seen? Oh, wow. I've seen over 2,000 movies, and of all those movies, 12 Angry Men is number 3. It's crazy. I love it. It's perfect. I could talk about 12 Angry Men all day, clearly, from all the videos I've made about it, but I'm going to stop there. I would love to hear your comments below on what your favorite Sidney Lumet movies are. Please no hate on other people's opinions, on my opinion or your opinion. Let's just leave comments and civilly discuss what movies we love from Sidney Lumet. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a great day.